Hello everybody, hopefully you can hear me okay. Demon Redmist here, and I'm going to do a couple of things on this video. Number one is give a few sort of crucial hints and tips about the Alsace circuit in the Nissan XANASSIN for the upcoming DGT League race. But I'm also going to touch on a few things that a few people have been struggling with this car already. So things like having a very loose rear end. But I do hope you can hear me. I can't hear myself because of a new headset, which doesn't allow me to hear myself, which I must admit I do not like. The headset itself is fucking brilliant, but I like to be able to hear myself. Sounds really big-headed, that, but when it comes to wearing headphones, it makes a big difference. Okay, so for the Alsace village, it's quite simple, this, really. There's a couple of rules that I'll go for around this particular track, and number one is avoid curbs at all costs. They will spin this car round like a fucking, I don't know what, like something that spins really fast, uncontrollably. Planet Earth, perhaps. So yeah, the curbs around here with this car are going to spin it fucking horribly, and there's not a lot you can do. To be honest, you would have to go through lots of situations of being on the curb and being spun out, and then trying lots of different ways to avoid being on the curb and spinning out to actually get away with it. And to be honest, if you do get on a curb, get off the throttle, straighten that steering, and do whatever you can to make the car as straight as possible. If you keep your foot in, you're spinning. If you try steering back onto the track, you're spinning. So be very, very cautious of that. Literally every single lap, avoid the curbs. Now, one of the ways that you can actually do that is to take a different approach to this circuit than most. In that, in qualifying, the only way to get a really fast lap time around here is to really wring the neck out of the car and attack the track. That's one thing. But in the race, where you've got to go around here, well, it's a 40-lap race, so we're probably looking somewhere 20 to 25 times, you need to do it without crashing, really. So that's what I'm going to show here. How to go around this track consistently without going off. It's not going to be the fastest way around this track, because the fastest leads to having accidents, okay? Until you've had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. And let's face it, if you're watching this video, chances are you've not had lots of practice. Okay, so the key points to being consistent around this track is do not brake late. If you brake later than the points that I am going to mention, then you are going to struggle to slow the car down. You're going to overheat the tyres. You're going to struggle to actually steer in the corner, which means you're either going to be missing the apex by an absolute mile and then running wide and ending up on a curb or grass, and you don't want to do that, or you're actually going to make it around the corner, but when you get to the next one, you're not going to have the grip in that corner because you've overheated the tyres. So the trick here is to hit the braking points, okay? Dive bombing is not going to gain you a lot here. Hit the braking points and be consistent and be calm and smooth, okay? Because that's what's going to allow you to have grip lap after lap after lap. Right, and that's what you need, and it'll also allow you to avoid the curbs. Now, one thing that I am doing is I'm running my brake balance on 2 to the front, but bear in mind, if you run your brake balance on 2 to the front but you absolutely ignore my braking points here, you will cook your front tyres and you will have no grip and you'll wonder what the hell I am doing. But if you stick to my braking points, then this brake balance is a nice brake balance. And if you are losing the rear of the car on this brake balance, then chances are it's because you're either off the racing line, so on the dirt part of the track, or you're downshifting too soon. So you're hitting the limiter and then you're locking the rear wheels. Now, something I mentioned on commentary this week is about this car is fast. That doesn't mean you have to do everything fast. You can do things slowly in this car, and because it is fast, it will do them quickly for you. So you don't have to turn in really aggressively or really quickly. The car can do that for you. Just turn in smoothly and gently. Okay, now I do know there's a few points around this car where people are going to struggle a lot, and to be honest, majority of it is from this corner onwards. That is a very tricky braking zone, but we'll get on to that. And then the final run up the hill and then down the hill into the chicane. So I'm going to start off at the final corner here. Now, one of the things that's going to catch a few people out in this car is that we have driven around here before in other cars, and you can actually brake later in those cars than you can this one. But that's because those cars were slow. This car is not slow. You're going to have to brake a little bit earlier. Now, normally I would have said where the inflatable is would be the braking point, but it's not in this car. You want to brake about 10 meters before it, so around about here. So just before the start of the curb. What that allows you to do is it allows you to brake quite hard, but not necessarily having to brake fully. And the reason for that is if you brake fully here, the car gets a little out of shape and you're overheating the tyres. By braking at this point, you'll be able to brake enough to get the car slowed down and take this corner in second gear and hitting the apex every time, right? If you are finding yourself in any other position than this, you are out of position and you've probably braked way too late. You do not want to be anywhere other than here and avoiding the curb. Second gear, we can give it a bit of a squirt of the throttle, and we do want to take a kind of a wide turn in, but don't leave the door wide open. Don't turn in too late, but avoid the curb on the left. If you touch that yellow and blue curb, she will spin you around before you know what the fuck is happening. Okay, so it's crucial to get the first part right so you can avoid hitting the curb here. And it comes from braking at the right point. Okay, turn one. I've seen quite a few people braking at the start of the curb, but what I would say is it's too late. You can get around the corner, but you're overheating your front tyres and you're running deep and you can't get to the apex. And if you actually look at it, the 100 metre board is next to me and the 50 metre board is up there. Now, if this was any other track, you'd probably be braking around 75 metres to 100 metres. And it's not that different here. Personally, I'm going for about 10 metres before the curb, which is going to work out at about, what, 60 metres-ish. So I'm braking around about here, and that's because my aim is to get close to the apex curb and avoid the exit curb without causing any damage to my tyres at all. So we hit the brakes. Get off the brakes before we turn in and be cautious. Let the car slow down around the corner, and then we can gently work the throttle back on until we know that we can exit the corner without running wide. Once we know we're not going to run over towards that curb, we can go full throttle here, no problems whatsoever. If you do get on this curb, get off that throttle and straighten that steering. Okay, flat out bit here, and this left-hander is also flat out. There are a couple of ways around this corner. One is to carry a tight line. It can be faster, but it does scrub the tyres more. The preferred way is to take a wider entry, to touch slower on the way in, but it does a lot less damage to your tyres. Now the braking point for this next right-hander, again, is about 10 metres before the banner above the road. And you'll notice there's a bit of a theme here to what would normally be the braking point, which is the banner, 10 metres before it. By braking 10 metres before it, we can get our braking done in a straight line, we can get it down to third gear, and we can begin to turn it in. Because we want to get our car into this position. If you are not getting your car into this position, you are entering this corner too fast. If you are getting your car into this position, but you can't do it in third gear, again, you are entering the corner too fast. So ideally, you want to be able to slow it down and be in this position in third gear. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the exit of this corner is very awkward. The rear end of the car goes very light. So if you're in second gear, it's even more aggressively light than it is in third gear. So it's more stable in third, but it's also faster to take the whole corner in third as well. But by approaching it in the way that I've mentioned, brake 10 metres before the banner and aim for third gear, it means that if we are going to miss the apex at all, we can do the additional knockdown of a gear 2 seconds to save our corner, still hit the apex, and then be up into third gear on the exit of the corner quite quickly. Again, exit curb here, avoid at all costs. This is a part of the track where the rear of the car is going to get very twitchy on you. Okay, move over to the right hand side. This left hander in this car, not quite flat out, but very, very close. But to be honest, for tyre life, turn in, little lift, and then back on the power. If you do try it flat out, you'll run wide. If you are running wide here, it's because you're not lifting off early enough. Okay, another one with the banner, which used to be the braking point, which is quite brave when you think about it. It's only 50 metres, but again, about 10 metres before the banner is your braking point. Hit those brakes. The aim here is to try and take this corner in third gear. However, any issues whatsoever, second gear is there for us, always, okay? So you may find that you take this corner in second gear a lot. That's fine, okay? Just make sure it's not because you're running too deep. So we're on the brakes, third gear, towards the end of the curve, we can start turning in, avoid the apex curb. Early on the power, do not run wide. If you're running wide, you've not slowed down enough and you're getting on the power too soon. Flat out through the kink, and then a corner that I love, a lot of people struggle with. Before we get on top of the hill here, we want to be on the brakes, okay? Not heavily, just enough to slow us down, so that at this point we can knock it down to third gear, stay off the throttle until we are down by the apex, and then we can floor it. Okay, taking it any other way than that is going to lead to you going towards the edge of the track, the grass, and spinning. Do not try taking that corner in fourth gear. Chances are, unless you have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of laps around here, you are going to do nothing other than run wide. Okay, right, now the big corner. Love this corner. There are a few different ways to take this corner. For me though, the line should always be the same, right? Unless you are battling with someone. But the line should be the same regardless of what you do with your gears. Me personally, at the moment, I am trying to hold fifth gear around the whole of this corner, and if need be, dropping it down to fourth. But the aim is to be coming in here absolutely flat out. Then just before the marshal post, we do a little bit of a lift, we start turning in, and then we're back on the throttle. But that back on the throttle is a gentle, it's not flat out, right? Because what I need to do is let the car roll down the hill, staying in 5th gear, but I need to get to about this point where I know, okay, I can hit the apex of this corner, which is at the end of the curb, okay? So once I feel I can make that point and keep going, I will then be flat out. But you'll notice the way I go around this corner is not fast or erratic or twitchy. It's very smooth and very simple. Okay, now we're into what is easily the most technical part of the circuit. Now, for anyone that's watched my previous videos about how to approach this corner, the process is very much the same. If you go flat out around this corner and hit the brakes here, you're not making the corner. Or at least you're going to be so out of control or so killing your tyres that you're not going to then make the next corner or the corner after. Yeah, don't do it. The way I find it is best, most stable and fast, to be honest, is on approach to this corner. And the thing is, it's not difficult either. On approach to this corner, do a little lift, gently on the brakes, and then when we're straight, full brakes, right? So we're doing a lift early, gently on the brakes, just to slow the car down a little bit, so that when we do get to that point at the end of the curve where the car is straight, then we can go full brakes, and you'll be amazed the car will then stop very, very quickly without losing control. You'll also find that you'll be able to hold the inside of the corner, again, avoid the curb, but using 2nd gear. And 2nd gear around that corner is faster. Okay, this left-hander, I love this left-hander. So many people struggle with this corner though. Now, the reason I've seen a lot of people struggle is because they turn in too soon, take too much curb and end up running wide. Or because they're turning in too soon, they're making the corner a different shape than what it really is. This corner can be done in 4th gear every lap, regardless of what condition your tyres are in. It's as simple as that. It's a 4th gear corner with ease. The way to do it is to approach in 4th gear, turn in at the banner, and then little lift off and then back on the power, and it's an easy corner. There's nothing really more to say than that. If you're running wide there consistently, you are either turning in too soon or you're using 3rd gear. And going into the corner in 3rd gear actually makes the car a lot less stable as you're trying to get up the hill. Okay, and as I've already mentioned about the downhill part, you'll see that as well. Okay. Right, I am now going to put a fresh set of tyres on and try and show you exactly what I was talking about there. Now, one thing I know, for example, that Mitch was finding last night was that his qualifying pace around here, very quick. His race pace, not so fast. He was struggling with it. And that comes down to attacking the track too aggressively, meaning that his tyres didn't have the grip to keep him consistently going around the track, whereas a number of people who were slower in a qualifying section were able to consistently do faster lap times in a race. So as I mentioned, the way that I'm showing to get around this track is about, it's not about being the fastest, it's about staying on the tarmac. Too much curb, As I've also mentioned, avoid the curbs at all costs. Okay, so brake about 10 metres before the curb. Let the car get down to the apex curb and then full throttle. Avoid exit curb. Work our way over to the right. Flat out left. Brake about 10 metres before the banner. For a third gear corner, second if necessary. Move over to the right, little lift, and then full throttle. Comfortably makes the corner. Brake 10 metres before the banner. For ideally third gear, second gear if necessary. Flat out kink, brake before the crest of the hill. To get it down into third gear, stay off the throttle until we're at the apex, and now we're full throttle on the exit. Lift off just before the marshal's post, turn in, feather throttle, lower down the track, all the way to the apex of the end of the curve. Calm, smooth, and no panic. Lift off, gentle braking, full braking. For a second gear hairpin, first gear if necessary, flat out on the exit. Fourth gear, little lift on the way in, and we can make it up the hill. Brake about 10 metres before the blue and white inflectable. For a second gear, burst the throttle, avoid the curb, and floor it through the final corners. All gone down to first gear, didn't need it. So I'm going to continue to do a couple more laps here like this before I go on to why some people are struggling with the rear of the car. So the way that I've mentioned about taking this track, you'll notice that when I've said there was a third gear corner, you might see me sometimes taking a slightly lower gear, and that's simply my automatic reaction of, if I'm not perfect in the corner, how am I going to save it? Now obviously corners like this, there's not a lot you really need to do, but for example down here, if I don't get the braking absolutely spot on, see, that's absolutely fine, so second gear's fine, but if I get it a little bit wrong, I automatically know first gear's there ready and waiting. And something you'll hopefully notice as well is that when I'm doing my downshifts, I try and do them exactly the same way every time in each corner. So each corner might not be the same, but every time I go through the same corner it's the same. So for example down here, if I thrash down the gears too quick while braking late, now I'm losing the rear, full lock to stay on the road, and now the rear's loose. So being erratic with the downshifts while braking late is not going to help. Braking at the normal point and being a bit erratic with the downshifts isn't going to help either. So there, I've downshifted and bounced off the limiter, but that's pushed the car on a little bit, so I've ended up running wide a little bit. So it's all about, for me anyway, it's all about smoothness and repetition. So like gentle on the brakes, hard on the brakes, do the downshift. You'll notice I'm not doing a single downshift there until I'm actually doing my full braking. And this is where I suppose, where I've talked before about do your downshifts by how many downshifts do you need to do. Not necessarily, okay, second gear corner, because that can be difficult. But for example, I know, get out of this corner, right, what gear do we get up to? Fifth, okay, down 3. If we get up to 6th gear, before the next braking point, it'll be down 3. With a second gear or down additional if I need it. A little left, flat out, get to 6, down 3, down 4 if I need to. Okay, down 2. Staying off the throttle till I'm at the apex. Little left. Feather the throttle, let the car lower, lower, lower down to the apex. And now we're floored. Little left. Little brake, full brake, downshift. So downshift 4 with an additional 1 if needed. Little left in 4th. Down 4. But again, also keep an eye on what's happening with the steering wheel. The aim is turn in once, turn out once. Sometimes there's a few little variations on that, but there's no erratic movements unless I'm desperately having to save the car. Now as the tyres begin to wear, there's a couple of the corners that do go a little bit from sort of more from 3rd gear corners to 2nd gear corners. That one isn't one of them. I will point them out. Now, I'm probably making this look quite easy regarding to not spinning, but the key to that is I'm not getting on the curbs. Okay, so as the tyres wear, turn 1 is still going to be a 2nd gear corner, but what you'll find is you may have to get on the throttle a little bit later or be just a little more cautious on the exit. This corner will still be a flat out corner. The next right-hander, normally 3rd gear, may have to be a 2nd. But it's still more stable to do it in 3rd. We'll still need a little lift here, but it's the next corner which may need more 2nd gear as the tyre wears. Now another way you can take this corner is knock it down to 4th gear and try and accelerate all the way around it. Not necessarily fast, but if you can't quite get yourself down to the apex, you can use fourth to help you lower the car down the hill. Okay, I'm going to try and get on some of the curbs that I don't want to get on, okay? I got lucky there that it didn't spin me. Either way, that's just lost me, what, 2-3 seconds? Now, exit curb here. If you get on this, I missed it, but if you do get on that exit curb, straighten up your wheel. Now, same for the next exit curb, I will try and get on it. I got away with it. Not very often that happens. Now, interestingly, I went full brake quite early there, but when I actually got to the corner, even though I'd gone down to first gear, I didn't have the grip on the front tyres to actually turn the car around the corner. Okay, get ready for this. What the fuck? Okay, I can't have touched the curb there. There you go. See, that's what happens if you don't get off the throttle. So off the throttle, steering as straight as possible. Obviously I am intentionally driving bad at this point. Also, you don't want to go on that curb because it does bounce you up. Alright, let's see if we can get on this exit curb again. All out of shape. I'm surprised, I mean, maybe because I've been practicing a lot and I've got used to doing what I need to save the car. It might be happening automatically. Now, interestingly, I brake gentle, into braking heavy, had much more grip at the corner. Yes, I still needed first, but I had more grip at the corner. There you go. Now, normally you'd end up facing the wrong direction, but obviously I was prepared for it. Okay. Oh, right. So there's my tips about this track anyway. Crucial to avoid the curbs. Crucial to get the braking points that I've mentioned. Braking any later than what I've mentioned, yes, you might get round the corner, but you're going to hurt your tyres and you're going to struggle at the next corner, and so on and so on. And if you're braking later at every corner, you are going to kill your tyres, and chances are you're going to be ramming into people. So be very, very careful on that one. Right. Okay, now for a bit that I know a few people have been struggling with this car. The only thing is, I'm going to need to change the track. No, I don't want to vote. I'm the only one here. You're not bad. I'm going to need to change the track, but I need to find one that's suitable for what I want to be able to show. I need something with multiple very tight corners. Oh, okay. Would that one work? Not Sakuba, I'm on about. I'm thinking. Topless has got a few, but not quite got the corners I need. Sanquar might have them. Spa does, but right at the end of the lap, not earlier. Actually, you know what? Fuji will work. Or what about yeah, Fuji should work. With the chicane. Okay. Now, one of the things that I know people have been struggling with this car is that they're finding the rear end to be a little bit loose. Now, one thing that I would say is, if you struggle to get on top of it, in this car, do not be afraid of putting a little bit of traction control on. If you've been driving all of the other cars without traction control on, and then you've got to this one and you've hit a bit of a wall, there is no hardship in putting a little bit of TC on in this car, because this is up a big level compared to cars we've driven recently. Okay. On the other hand, if you really want to get on top of it, hopefully I'm going to be able to show you how to do that. And it comes down to, quite honestly, 2 or 3 very simple things. Number 1 is, what speed are you going? Number 2 is, how much are you steering? Excuse me. And number 3 is, how much are you pressing your throttle? Because if the answer to number 1 is that you're going very, very fast, i.e. 100, 150 mile an hour, and you're losing the rear end, then that's a whole different problem to what anybody else will experience in this car, because you don't lose the rear end in this car at those speeds. Now, if you're losing the rear end of the car 30 to 80 miles an hour, that I can understand and makes sense. And it's going to be because, excuse me, of number 2, how much steering input are you applying, and number 3, how much throttle are you applying. And it's in connection with gear number 2 and gear number 1. But first gear and second gear in this car can be very, very treacherous. Third gear, less so. And let's see if I can give a little bit of an example of that. Okay, so I'm actually going to turn around and face the wrong way for a moment. Okay, so all I'm going to do is basically a start in first gear. Half throttle, wheel spin, and I've had to do a little bit of work to keep the car going in the same direction. Right, so I'm getting wheel spin in first gear. Second gear. Not as much wheel spin. Well, no wheel spin, but it took a bit longer for the car to get going, right? So that tells us that if we go full throttle in second gear, it's going to be less troublesome on the rear tyres than it would be to do it in first gear, which is true, but at the same time, it includes second gear as well. Normally you wouldn't do a start in second, but in second gear on the exit of corners, if you have got too much throttle on with too much steering on, you're going to get wheel spin. However, if you were either less throttle or less steering, or in a higher gear, you're not going to get the wheel spin. So that's what I'm going to try and show here. Get out miles wide there. So what I'm going to try and do is drive a little bit against my nature in the much slower corners and try and get the rear end out. Now it shouldn't happen in third gear upwards. Okay, there's the rear end going, second gear. Okay, we've got triple chicane coming up. Okay, I'm second gear. Why did it do that? Well, I had a lot of steering input with a lot of throttle input. Oh shit. Also, if you have enough in this car, caution, look how much throttle I got on to get the car going again. Quarter throttle. Anything much more than that, she's going to want to spin on you, and I've got dirty tyres, so it still wants to spin on me. Losing the rear, too much steering angle, too much throttle. So all of those moments there of getting oversteer with a loose rear end is actually not a lot to do with the rear of the car. It comes down to what speed am I going? I'm in first, second gear. Secondly, how much steering input have I got on? A lot. Okay, well let's apply less steering input. And then as the throttle goes on, steering comes off. You can't have lots of steering and lots of throttle. Not in second gear or lower anyway. Okay, lots of steering, lots of throttle, lots of understeer. Now oversteer. So too much steering angle, too much throttle. Okay, we spun here last time. A lot less throttle, no problem. It may have felt slow, but it was faster than spinning. Lot of steering, lot of throttle, all over the place. And around she goes. Okay, so I've kind of taken that to the extremes a little bit, but it's to emphasize what I'm showing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and drive round and show how I'm doing it, right? And it may surprise people in that I'm either using considerably less steering angle than you might be, or I'm using actually a lot more throttle than you're using. Now it might be that because I've got less steering angle on, I can have more throttle on. Okay, so those two are, it's like they're connected on a sliding scale. You can have more of one or the other, but not a lot of both. So what I would say is with this car is, any time you're in first and second gear, Your number one thing you need to make sure you do is be gentle with your throttle until your wheel is straighter. Once your steering wheel is getting straight, you can go full throttle, no problem, unless you've been off the track. So the important part to note as I continue on for the next lap is how much throttle application I'm using during the slower corners. Yes, there will become a point where I go full throttle, but it's the before that that's important. So I'm not full throttle until I'm coming off the steering. Now there is another way that you can kill wheel spin fairly quickly, second to third gear anyway, is by short shifting to third gear. Look at the throttle input, and yes, I'm full throttle on the exit, but that's because the wheel was straightened up for me to do it. Oh, I'm talking, not concentrating there. Gentle on the throttle until that steering wheel is coming straight. Now if you looked at my throttle then, you'd have noticed that when I actually applied the throttle, I went to full throttle very quickly. In that situation I was lucky enough that because I've ran wide, my steering wheel was straighter much sooner, but I was slow through the corner. So, like I said, the two are connected, the wheel and the throttle, in those lower gears. Now, there are a few other scenarios where you might lose the rear end. One of them being changes of direction. If you're too aggressive with the change of direction, with slightly too much throttle, then you can lose the rear end. I'll try and show it a bit in this triple chicane here. So first bit nicely. Now, yeah, we're all over the place because I was too aggressive with the throttle. So even on the previous laps I was able to get through there quite nicely with not a lot of throttle. On this occasion, adding that extra bit too much made the corners undrivable. Too much steering, too much throttle. Too much steering, too much throttle. But now, let's see how difficult it is to get the car going again. Okay. So yeah, with the changes of direction, if I think of okay, if you were to think of Le Mans with chicanes, right? Or even Monza, not the slow chicanes, because if you're losing the rear end at Monza in the slow chicanes, that's either because of the curbs or because, as I've mentioned, too much steering, too much throttle, okay? But the faster chicanes at Monza, Ascari, if you were losing the rear end through there, that is because of the changes of direction, right? And if you're doing that change of direction too aggressively with your steering or your throttle, that's where you then start making the rear end loose. It might sound like there's a lot to be done there, but actually it's quite simply comes down to slow things down on your steering wheel. Don't go dragging it from one direction to another. You are effectively Scandinavian flicking the car. Oh, excuse me. And that's why it goes sideways in the faster corners, right? If you Scandinavian flick the car, it's going to want to drift for you. That's what Scandinavian flicks do. Okay, so hopefully those tips I've given out there will help anyone that is struggling with the faster car in the slow corners mainly and the rear end of the car. It all comes down to being very gentle with your throttle. Now, if you're using a wheel and you wear footwear, try not wearing the footwear so you can be a little more precise with your pedal. Unless you've got very stiff pedals like I do, then at least try and wear very thin-soled footwear. It makes a big difference. Right, anyway, that's going to be me done for tonight. Have a good one, everybody. And if you need any more help, let me know. See you in a bit. Let me fuck off.